Most 19-year-old actresses worry about remembering their lines and hitting their marks on stage. Mary Nevins had bigger concerns on her mind, like how to systematically destroy one of America's most powerful political dynasties using nothing but newspapers, scandal, and a genius-level understanding of public relations. While other young women her age were learning proper etiquette and hoping to marry well, Mary was honing the dark arts of media manipulation with the precision of a chess grandmaster planning checkmate 20 moves ahead. The political establishment had no idea they were dealing with someone who understood that in the emerging age of mass media, a single determined individual could wield more power than entire congressional committees. Their fatal mistake was treating her like just another inconvenient young woman who could be managed, silenced, or simply ignored until she disappeared into historical obscurity. In today's episode of Old Money Allure, we uncover how America's most underestimated political operator taught the establishment that sometimes the most devastating attacks come from the people they least expect to fight back. In 1886, a 19-year-old aspiring actress met a teenage political prince, and their 18-day whirlwind romance would become the most reckless love story in American political history, one that would eventually topple presidential dreams. Mary Nevins from Columbus, Ohio, had no idea that her whirlwind 1886 courtship with 17-year-old James G. Blaine Jr. would become the most politically explosive love story in American history. Jamie wasn't just any rich kid with daddy issues. He was the son of James G. Blaine Sr., the charismatic, magnetic man who had dominated Republican politics as Speaker of the House, Senator, and Secretary of State. But here's the delicious irony. While his father was considered the party's most formidable presidential contender, Jamie himself was what we'd now call a complete disaster. His own father later described him with brutal honesty as the most helpless, least responsible of all his children, which, coming from a politician, was remarkably candid character assassination. Jamie had already been kicked out of multiple elite preparatory schools for an impressive array of bad behaviour, including drunkenness, petty theft, and what Victorian society delicately called dalliances. James Sr. would eventually provide an even more devastating assessment, calling his son an object of constant watchfulness to his parents, his brothers and his sisters, a source of constant anxiety, who was as readily influenced to the wrong as the right. The secret elopement sent both families into panic mode, creating the kind of scandal that makes modern celebrity meltdowns look quaint by comparison. Despite initial family horror, the American public ate up this Romeo and Juliet story with theatrical ambition meets political royalty, though Jamie's ice-cold mother Harriet never accepted her actress daughter-in-law. The marriage became tabloid gold as James Sr. campaigned for Republican candidates throughout the fall, with newspapers treating every detail of the young couple's unconventional romance like a serialized novel. What made this story even juicier was that cracks were already showing in the fairy tale facade. By 1890, Mary had grown bored with playing the dutiful political wife and shocked everyone by moving to New York City to chase her Broadway dreams. Her theatre career ambitions were scandalous enough that when she fell seriously ill with rheumatic inflammation, the entire theatrical community rallied around her with benefit performances. The February 18th, 1890, Broadway benefit became its own source of gossip and drama within New York's entertainment circles. Mary was supposed to tour with famous producer Daniel Frohman's company during the 1889 to 1890 season, but illness derailed what could have been her big break. As her marriage to the perpetually irresponsible Jamie crumbled and her acting dreams intensified, Mary began contemplating a solution that would send seismic shocks through the entire American political establishment. She was about to prove that hell hath no fury like an ambitious actress trapped in a marriage to a political family's biggest embarrassment. Little did anyone know that this seemingly sweet love story was about to transform into the most spectacular political revenge plot of the Gilded Age, and Mary held all the cards. The revenge plot that would bring down a presidential candidate began when Mary made a shocking decision that would scandalize the nation. She was heading to America's most notorious divorce colony. By 1891, Mary had reached her absolute limit with Jamie's spectacular failures and began plotting her escape to a frontier town that newspapers breathlessly called a Mecca for the mismated. Sioux Falls, South Dakota, had become America's divorce capital thanks to revolutionary laws that made ending a marriage almost as easy as ordering room service. You just needed 90 days of residency and a good story. This prairie boomtown had transformed into a luxury destination where desperate socialites could achieve the impossible: legal freedom from marriages that would trap them forever in stuffier states. Mary joined a fascinating cast of elite refugees, including Margaret de Stewers, an Astor family descendant whose international divorce scandal was already captivating the world. The opulent Cataract House Hotel had become the unofficial headquarters of this divorce revolution, offering 5-star accommodations and discreet services for wealthy women seeking legal liberation. Mary settled into the hotel like she was planning a military campaign, spending nearly a year building her legal case while newspapers began stalking her every move with the intensity of modern paparazzi. But here's where Mary revealed her secret weapon. She possessed a genius-level understanding of media manipulation that would make today's publicists weep with envy. When her divorce proceedings finally erupted in February 1892, the Sioux Falls courtroom was absolutely packed with 250 sensation seekers who had come for the legal equivalent of a heavyweight championship fight. Mary delivered a devastating performance, accusing Jamie of abandonment and neglect, while painting a picture of marriage destroyed by his drinking, financial recklessness, and complete inability to function as an adult. The court granted her everything she wanted: custody of their 3-year-old son, alimony payments, and most importantly, complete vindication of her decision to flee. But the real bombshell came when the presiding judge publicly eviscerated the Blaine family, criticizing their unfriendliness toward Mary and declaring that their rejection had contributed significantly to the marriage's destruction. This judicial smackdown of one of America's most powerful political dynasties made front-page headlines across the nation and gave Mary's story official credibility. The judge's harsh words were particularly devastating because they came from a legal authority who had heard all the evidence and concluded that the mighty Blaine family were the real villains in this drama. Mary had achieved the impossible. She'd not only escaped her marriage, but had secured a legal victory that positioned her as the innocent victim of political family dysfunction. As news of the divorce and the judge's brutal assessment of the Blaine family spread like wildfire across America's newspapers, political insiders began whispering about potential damage to James Sr.'s presidential ambitions. The timing was absolutely catastrophic for the veteran politician, who was gearing up to challenge President Benjamin Harrison for the 1892 Republican nomination. But Mary's courtroom triumph was merely the opening act in a media war that would prove far more destructive than anyone could have imagined, and she was just getting started. The courtroom victory that destroyed James Sr.'s political future began when he made the fatal mistake of underestimating a 19-year-old actress who turned out to be as skilled at using newspapers to her advantage as any political pro. This was a man who had survived decades of brutal political warfare, corruption scandals, and presidential campaigns, yet he was about to be systematically destroyed by his former daughter-in-law's media genius. James Sr.'s first strategy was classic old-school politics: maintain dignified silence and hope the scandal would fade before the Republican nomination fight began in earnest. But Mary was already 3 moves ahead, launching a sophisticated media campaign that portrayed her as a wronged young mother, abandoned by a heartless political dynasty drunk on power. Her understanding of press manipulation was so advanced, it left the experienced politician scrambling to catch up, as she courted reporters and shaped coverage with the precision of a seasoned campaign strategist. By February 28, 1892, the mounting pressure forced Blaine Sr. to abandon his strategy of noble silence and launch what newspapers gleefully described as a vitriolic open letter offensive against his former daughter-in-law. His explosive public statement accused Mary of tricking Jamie into a secret marriage and painted her as a manipulative actress who had deliberately targeted his vulnerable teenage son for personal gain. This attack was a spectacular political miscalculation that backfired immediately and devastatingly, starting with the alienation of Catholic voters who were outraged by his assault on Mary's faith. Mary's counterattack on March 2nd, 1892, was a masterpiece of political theatre that put the powerful politician on the defensive while positioning herself as the victim of a family conspiracy. Her brilliant open letter demanded that Blaine Sr. publish the complete correspondence between her and Jamie within 10 days, or face her public release of Jamie's most embarrassing letters. The threat was devastating because everyone knew Jamie's letters would be filled with evidence of his drinking, financial disasters, and general incompetence as both husband and human being. This public chess match escalated into a full-scale media war that dominated front pages across America, with each side trying to destroy the other through increasingly personal and vicious attacks. Headlines began revealing humiliating details about Jamie being a wayward, spoiled young man with a history of drunkenness, petty theft and dalliances, who had been expelled from at least 3 prestigious preparatory schools. The press coverage exposed the Blaine family's dirty laundry, including Jamie's pathetic financial dependence on his parents and his complete failure to support his own wife and child. Mary's media strategy proved so devastatingly effective that public opinion increasingly viewed her as the clear victor in this campaign between the divorcee and the diplomat. The scandal reached nuclear levels when rumours exploded that Richard C. Kerens and 5 other Blaine supporters had secretly raised $65,000 to buy Mary's silence by purchasing her most damaging letters. Although Blaine Sr. frantically denied these bribery allegations in a June 8, 1892 letter to the New York World, the controversy continued to metastasize and destroy his reputation for integrity. The alleged bribery scheme suggested that Blaine's inner circle was so desperate to contain Mary's destruction that they were willing to pay enormous sums to silence her, making the entire family appear both corrupt and guilty. As the crucial 1892 Republican National Convention approached, political observers began questioning whether Blaine Sr. could possibly survive the public relations apocalypse that his own family dysfunction had created. But Mary's media campaign had already achieved something far more devastating than anyone realized. She had weaponized publicity itself against one of America's most powerful politicians, and the final blow was about to fall. The final destruction of James G. Blaine Sr.'s presidential ambitions came with mathematical precision on June 4, 1892, when the Republican National Convention delivered a humiliation so complete it ended decades of political dominance. Despite his legendary political skills and formidable party connections, Blaine Sr. managed only a pathetic 182 1/6 delegate votes, while President Benjamin Harrison crushed him with 535 1/6 votes on the first ballot. The divorce scandal had systematically destroyed Blaine Sr. E.C.'s most precious political commodity. His carefully cultivated image of moral authority and personal integrity that had sustained his career through multiple corruption scandals. Political insiders understood that while other factors contributed to his defeat, health problems and the lingering stench of the Mulligan Letters corruption scandal, Mary's media war had delivered the killing blow to his presidential dreams. The public feud had exposed the Blaine family's spectacular dysfunction in the most humiliating way imaginable, with newspapers across America chronicling every embarrassing detail of Jamie's failures and his father's increasingly frantic damage control attempts. Mary had proven that individual determination and media savvy could topple even the most entrenched political dynasties, demonstrating how a strategic young woman could challenge powerful institutions and win. Her refusal to be intimidated by political pressure and her sophisticated manipulation of press coverage had pioneered tactics that would become standard weapons in future political warfare. The scandal marked a turning point in American politics, showing how mass circulation newspapers could shape public opinion and destroy political careers through relentless coverage of personal scandals. Following his convention humiliation, Blaine Sr.'s political career essentially ended in disgrace, though he limped through his remaining time as Secretary of State until the Harrison administration concluded. The man who had been the Republican Party's most feared presidential contender for over a decade had been systematically destroyed by a 19-year-old actress who refused to play the role of submissive victim. Mary, meanwhile, demonstrated her remarkable resilience by quickly rebuilding her life and social standing despite the national controversy and powerful enemies she had created. She remarried with impressive speed and success, wedding doctor. William Tillinghast Bull, on May 30th, 1893, in Manhattan, barely a year after her divorce was finalised. Her successful new marriage proved her ability to overcome scandal and social ostracism while pursuing both her acting career and comfortable upper-class lifestyle. Mary lived prosperously until her death on February 8, 1911, in Newport, Rhode Island, at age 44, having completely reinvented herself as a respectable society matron. Her victory became legendary as a symbol of the cultural revolution sweeping the Gilded Age, when traditional power structures were being challenged by new technologies, evolving social norms, and the democratization of information. Mary's case anticipated future women's rights movements and proved how individual women could use personal choices and public actions to shape major political outcomes despite being formally excluded from political power. The divorce scandal ultimately demonstrated that in the emerging age of mass media and public opinion, even America's most powerful political figures were vulnerable to destruction by unexpected opponents, especially determined individuals who understood how to weaponize publicity. James G. Blaine Sr.'s presidential dreams didn't die in Congress or on campaign trails, but in newspaper columns, murdered by a brilliant young woman who turned scandal into a political weapon and refused to disappear quietly into historical obscurity. Mary Nevins Blaine had achieved the impossible. She had single-handedly destroyed a presidency that never was, proving that in America even teenage actresses could topple political giants if they played their cards right. The spectacular clash between Mary Nevins and James G. Blaine Sr. revealed how the Gilded Age's rigid social structures were already beginning to crack under pressure from new media technologies and changing gender expectations. What began as a simple teenage elopement evolved into a case study of how determined individuals could challenge established power through strategic use of publicity and public sympathy. With that said, we'd love to see you in the comments. If you were in Mary Nevins's position, would you choose a quiet divorce to avoid scandal or go all out with a public media campaign like she did? Thank you for watching another episode of Old Money Allure. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.